Hi everyone, welcome to North and South Pods. This is a Hope Street episode, and this is Debz, who we spoke about a few weeks ago when I did a podcast with Caitlin. I've heard Debz speak at Hope Street twice, which is a wellbeing hub in Ormskirk. I'll put the details in the podcast notes. But I've heard Deb's story twice, and it's really resonated with me that the power of it and how well-being and mental health can be so difficult to navigate when it's not good. And Deb just got a bit of an extraordinary story that we don't really know. Okay. We don't really know what you've been through, Deb. I don't think there's a name for it, is there? So how are you today? And thanks for coming on the pod.
I'm fine. I've had a hectic week, as I just prepped you and told you. But yeah, no, I know you've been trying to get me for ages to do this, and I'm always bloody busy, aren't I? But yeah, I'm here. I'm fine. I'm alive, and I'm feeling great. And I have been feeling great for the past few years now, believe it or not. But yeah, for me, it's a weird one, this mental health, because I knew what depression was, but I've never experienced it, and although I've learned that I've had triggers and things like that, through having therapy and stuff over the past 10 years, all of my 30s really. Yeah, there wasn't really a reason, or I didn't think there was a reason for why one day I just woke up and didn't want to live. And it was as simple as that. I kind of hit 30 and depression and anxiety hit me like a steam train. That was just, I woke up one day and I couldn't get out of bed, and I didn't want to get out of bed. And I just thought, I don't want to be here anymore. And that was as simple as it was. No reasons, obviously, like I say, since having therapy over 10 years, I've had 10 years worth of like different things. I've tried everything. I've tried every different drug. I've tried every different therapy, holistic therapies, all kinds. And I have learned little bits, which I do think help me now if it tries to pull me back a bit. But like I said, I've been feeling really good for like 2 or 3 years now. And I feel like I'm done with it. But I am highly medicated still. And I don't want to risk coming off them, because I've had friends in the past that have, been on antidepressants and stuff for 10 years, and they've said, I'm ready to come off them. They've weaned off them. They've been, they've done everything by the book, how it should be done. Within a month, they're in a mental institute, So I'm too scared for that. My medication doesn't affect me physically, as in putting weight on, or it doesn't do anything to me. So for me, if I have to take a tablet for the rest of my life, or 3 big ones, should I say, for the rest of my life every day, I'm happy to do that, because the risk of going back to where I was is far too much for me to contend with. I could not, I can't go back to that black place, the black dog, I like to call it. It's just not, possible for me. I don't want to go back there. I don't think, you've got to have big balls, shall I say, to commit suicide. I think it's a brave thing. I know it's classed as a selfish thing, but it's also, for me, it's brave. If you can take your life, you're a brave person. I've thought about it lots and lots, and I couldn't do it. I'd always say I don't want to go back there, because I couldn't go through what I've been through again. And it's just the horrible, all the things that come with it.
Yeah. I think it's interesting, because when I was 29, I remember the first day I felt tremendous anxiety. It was like a bit of a tidal wave. I was 29, and a lot of that was to do with steroids. I was taking steroids, not the ones to enhance muscles and stuff, but I was taking steroids, the immunosuppressant. After that, I had to stay on them for 4 years because of a genetic condition I've got. Once I came off the steroids, my mental health improved significantly. They were definitely making it worse. But I remember waking up one afternoon and feeling depression for the first time, again, like a wave. As you said, it's like they came from nowhere. But yeah. I felt like they were straws that broke camels' backs when it did happen, looking back at it. But
yeah, looking back and going through therapy, I've realised I've gone through significant points in my life that have been, well, therapists have told me they're enough to give you a nervous breakdown, just one of those things. And when I've talked about them, I've just passed them off as if they're nothing. And what's happened to me is I've been strong for so long, and then one silly little thing has broke the camel's back, like you say. And that's why I didn't realise what was happening to me, because I've been through all these tough things, I've survived them all, and then all of a sudden, like, it's like tripping over and then just losing the plot, you know, and it's like, wow, how, but it's not that, it is the build up of everything, and then that little thing that sends you over the top. And so it's like that fine line of being, you know, genius insanity kind of thing. It's like that fine line of, you're okay, but you're so strong that you're at breaking point, and any little, you know, anything, it could be someone that just says, just barges past you, one little thing it takes, and you are out, and then that's it. Then it's a long, long way back up once you're at that bottom. And I do believe I've been right at the bottom. It just got worse and worse for me. There was physical things and everything at the beginning. It's hard for me to think back now, actually. Obviously, I don't have a plan when I'm talking to someone. I just go completely off the cuff. I've not got no notes, nothing. I'm just going off my memory, which is also very bad because of medication. And I found that out because in group therapy, a lot of people who are on like antidepressants, SSRIs, things like that, they tend to have a really bad memory. It's part of it. Like, I mean, don't get me wrong, I can remember things, but like, you know, someone's name and things like that, I'm terrible. It's like goldfish memory. People actually notice it now, and I'm like, oh my God, am I getting Alzheimer's me? But it's not, it's just the medication, I think. So I do forget a lot of things, but I remember going back to the beginning. So when I was like 30 and that, I used to be afraid of going in the shower. I used to think it hurt me. Although I always felt dirty, I always itched all across my the top of my arms, my chest. I'd rip them to bits, itching because I'd feel this dirt. And even when I went in the shower, it would make me worse. I used to have to be supervised in the shower. I'd have like my mum or my daughter have to come in and sit on the toilet seat, you know, and watch me, because I'd stand there like Smeagol. I've been both extremes of the weight as well. So I've either been really skinny, like a bloody 44 kilos, lost loads of weight, couldn't eat, heaving on my food. And then I've been the opposite, where I binge eat things and go over the top. I'm like excessive. It's OCD, it's compulsive, you know what I mean? I either don't eat anything, or I'm eating full packets of chocolate, biscuits, and, you know, all kinds of crap like that. So I remember it being described as I'd stand in the shower like Smeagol, thinking, that hurts my skin. I mean, now I love a shower, I love getting out, I feel fresh. And I just think, how is it possible that once upon a time I couldn't stand in the shower and I'd cry over it and have to be supervised? It's almost comical, you know. I laugh at it. I think, oh my God, how can something that's in your mind, it's not physical, it's not really real, it's your mind that's tricking you, go, you know, like tell you that a shower hurts. It's just little things like that were absolutely ridiculous. I used to have this thing that I called flying high as well. So every time I change my medication, you know, when you take meds, it takes 6 weeks to get them into your system. After that 6 weeks, if they're not for you, you go back to day one. There's no like, oh, I'll take a new one and join on and go from there. Nah, man, you're back to the floor again. 6 weeks. And obviously it gets worse before it gets better. So all these medications that I'd change and try, they all had like different things, like sent me different ways, you know. I've been on all of them. I've tried them all. And at the moment, the meds I take at the moment, it's a duloxetine, which is like, I'm at the highest dose. So I hope I don't ever need any more. But that's like a motivator drug. It's to give me a kick up the ass kind of thing. That's what I felt like I always needed. Like I just had no energy, no care, no, for nothing. I felt like, you know, my daughter was older. I think this played a part of it as well. I wasn't needed anymore. And she's the only thing in the world, you know. And since being a schoolgirl, because I had her so young, this is another thing that plays. These are the little things I've learned that have built me up to where I am. You know, I needed someone to need me, I think. And obviously Kennedy, she grew up, she learned to drive, she finished school, she was, you know, great for a set. Not during my 30s when I was actually ill. She was a teenager still, but she's a grown-up teenager. So she never relied on me too much, you know. She's a good adult. She's still brilliant now, you know what I mean? I go to her for advice rather than her come to me kind of thing. But yeah, so I felt abandoned a bit. Not abandoned by her, because I know it's normal for your children to grow up and not need you, but I just felt like, well, what's the point of me being here? For so long, I'd been a mum since being like 15, 16, and then all of a sudden she didn't want me. I was living on my own, you know. I just I felt like I was abandoned and lonely, and all of these little things played a part of it. You know, obviously she didn't leave till like the later when I was in my later 30s. She was still at school, but I never really saw her. She was out with her friends at school all day. And so I just thought, I'm not needed anymore. So what I'd do is I'd stay in bed. And then when it'd get to like 3:30, when she was coming in from school, I'd jump up and pretend I'd been active all day. So I was a liar. It turned me into a liar as well. I'd lie about what I was doing. You know, if my mum texted me, she'd be like, are you up? Are you okay? Yeah, I'm fine, blah, blah, blah. I wasn't at all. A lot of the time, I used to not even lie in my bed. This is another weird thing. And I think now I'm 43 years old and think, what was I doing? But I'd lie in the fetal position. It was my like security kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I'd lie on the floor as low as I could possibly lie. And I would lie there for days. And if no one would come round and see if I was okay, or like if my daughter didn't come home from school or at weekends when she was out, I could be lay on that floor for God knows how long. No water, no food. And I think it got to the point where I thought I didn't have the balls to kill myself. I wanted to. I used to think about how I'd do it. I'm a wimp. I don't like pain. So I used to think I'll just take loads and loads and loads of tablets. But knowing my luck, I wouldn't take enough. I always used to think about that and worry about that. And then worry about the shouting and the telling off I'd get if it didn't work. Do you know what I mean? So I'd lie there on the floor. And I had a pet rabbit at the time. And this is why I get so emotional over my pets, because that rabbit spent so many hours with me lay on the floor. It meant everything to me. And obviously later on, I lost that rabbit. And I remember being in work and looking at the CCTV of how I reacted when someone phoned me and told me from my family, your rabbit's died. I was so dramatic over it. And people were like, someone died out your family? I'm like, yeah, my rabbit. And they were like, you know, looking at me as if, what? People don't understand that little bunny lay with me for hours and hours and hours through my darkest days. And it meant the world to me. I feel emotional talking about it now. That's how much he meant to me. So, yeah, I need to calm down.
No, I think when I wasn't too good, 29 to 30, it kicked off. And I was feeling terrible. I didn't work for 6 months. And it was 4 years. It was quite bad. And then it got better when I came off the steroids.
Yeah.
And one of the problems is with all these medications is they take months to kick in, they take months to withdraw from. And then in that space, horrible things can happen. So the famous writer, David Foster Wallace, he had all kinds of problems. He changed his medication and committed suicide in 2008. And when people say, I've had GPs say to me, oh yeah, you should be trying to come off these, you know, and I'm just at that stage now where I've tried to come off 3 times antidepressants and I've really, really struggled. And I've regretted it.
It's not worth it.
Yeah, I'm not prepared to do it. Not because I feel like I would do something. I've never been that bad, but because I just don't want to feel like that. Yeah. And the thing you said as well, I have my lad half the week. The days I haven't got him, sometimes I just feel a bit, what do I do now? Yeah. I know a few people who say, when you have something that's important in your life and then you lose that, you lose a bit of meaning and purpose, and it can be hard to find something else. And when I went through that time, me dog at the time, the relationship I had with me dog was so important. Like, I'd go out walking with my dog for 3 hours. And I think when I'm out with the dog listening to music in nature, I'm not thinking I feel like crap. I did, but it wasn't as bad. And that was so important that when me dog died, that dog had been through a lot with me. Do you know what I mean? And I felt that too, that you'd felt with your rabbit. But that medication you mentioned, is that a stimulant? What kind of a medication is it? The one that...
It's higher than an SSRI. And I also take pregabalin, which is a controlled drug, and that's for the anxiety. And I've added that quite, well, when I say quite recently, probably about 3 years ago, I added that because I started to feel anxious again and I panicked straight away. I'm like, oh my God, it's going to get me. It's going to get me. I live in fear of it. It's the only thing I'm scared of. I live in fear of depression getting me. That's why nothing else ever phases me. I can go on, jump out of a plane. I'll run a marathon on zero fitness, as you've seen this week. Do you know what I mean? I feel like I'm powerful. I can do anything. I've learned that it's mind over matter with things. Like I said, I bought a tarantula. I've been scared of spiders all of my life. And I just started doing these, like, not crazy things, but like pushing myself a little bit because I love my life now. And I've realised how life's for living. And I just think that when you suffer so bad and go to that place, you feel so grateful to be alive and still be here. I mean, if I'd have taken my life when I wanted to, hundreds of times, all the things I would have missed since then, my niece growing up, all those things, some people do actually miss them. You know, some people who actually do commit suicide. And this is why I like to help and come to places like Hope Street, and I'm not shy about speaking out. I'll say anything, and people are like, oh my God, you're so brave. Why'd you tell everyone? Aren't you embarrassed or ashamed? I'm not, because if I tell my story and can save one person, I've helped people that have been there wanting to kill themselves, and now they're okay. And it's taken years, sometimes months, sometimes it's quicker, sometimes it's longer. But when I actually get hold of those people and they're okay, they say, thank God I listened to you. I can't believe I felt like I did. And I feel, they put me on a pedestal, like, you've saved my life. And I haven't. They've done it themselves. Everyone has to do it themselves. No one can really pull you out of it but yourself. I've found that. Yes, medication can help, and, tips they give you in things like CBT and therapies that you do and one-on-ones. I've had the lot. Psychotherapy was the best for me. It went right back to childhood, and that brought up other.
Can I just talk about that then? Psychotherapy is a talking therapy where you go back through your life. It's not just about what's going on now. You go right back, don't you? So you felt like that. Yeah. So did you feel like that helped you to address those capital T traumas and smaller T traumas that had built up to when you were 30, when it started? Did that go back to all that?
Yeah, there was things in it that happened before my 30s and before depression and that hit me that I didn't think were traumas, and they are. Like, I've had a baby die in my arms. It fell off a balcony when I lived abroad, and I used to just talk about that as though it was nothing. But I watched and held. I had to fight the family off when they were coming down to try and pick this baby up. She'd fell 3 floors, so she had a head injury. So I knew I couldn't let anyone touch her. So I'm fighting off the family. She's a little beautiful little Spanish baby, and she ended up dying. And I used to just talk about that. Oh, that's not, oh yeah, baby died, but that is a trauma to some people that can cause a breakdown, and yet I felt it was nothing. So that's another little peg in my my thing. I've had very abusive relationships, ones where I've been threatened to be killed. Again, Argentinian boyfriend living abroad, very different to how British people treat each other. It's a different race, isn't it? A different, everything related a lot. I was with a guy for 6 months trying to get away from him. For 5 of those, I had to end up leaving my island. I had guns put to my daughter's head, but because I was in it at the moment, doing it and just taking each day as it came, I didn't think any of that was a trauma. I just thought, oh, it's not, we've had a breakup, blah, blah, blah. He's going to treat me like that. But again, those little things, they're serious things. They should, police should have been involved, all kinds. But I just passed it off again, blasé, as though it was nothing. So if you keep adding these little pegs to my board, shall we say, and when I got to 30, I can't even remember what the thing was that actually broke me at 30. But, I've had a lot of big things that have taken me to that point. And so going back with psychotherapy, which I had when I came back to the UK, because obviously I lived abroad for 12 years, and I was fine out there, or I thought I was. See, even SAD syndrome plays into my depression. The sun. I lived abroad for 12 years, and now all of a sudden I'm in a rainy, cold country that's dull a lot of the time. People, I used to say, no, the weather doesn't bother me, but I've learned it does. Everybody's in a better mood when the sun shines out. You can see it this week. As soon as the sun's come, everyone's happy. Everyone wants to say hiya. People let you pull out in your car. When it's dull, everyone's angry and vile, aren't they, to you, swearing, no time, throw the money at you at work. It does affect people. I don't care what you say. And I used to say, no, it doesn't affect me, but it does. So I've got so many little things that have added up to where I am. And it's just taken me, people say to me when they're ill, how long before I get better? And that's the only thing you can't tell someone. You can promise them there is a light. You can promise them there will be better days, because there will. I'm living proof, but you can't tell them how long. It's like, how long's a piece? It depends on their trauma. It depends on their situation. It depends if they've still got ongoing things. Like if you've got some kind of illness, how do you handle that and get over that kind of thing? Everyone's situation is different, and this is why doctors struggle so much with it. They really don't know. I mean, it's a lot more promoted now, isn't it? And like about out there, depression and that, like everyone will share it this week and do the bit. But like when it first got me 13 years ago, it wasn't really, I didn't know much about it. I didn't know where to go. There was no places like that I knew of, like Hope Street or anything like that. I I was kind of on my own, and it took me ages before I got any kind of help or therapy. You just don't realize. You don't realize there's things you can apply for to help you. You don't know. And a GP is a general practitioner. They don't, you know, a GP does not really know. I mean, I was lucky. My doctor's really, really good with me. Even if I phone him now, he will see me at the drop of a hat. I'm lucky that he cares. He does actually, I feel like he actually cares about me. But some people don't get that. And with a GP, like you say, they're just general. So they don't know like the depth of the mind and stuff like that. You need to be then referred to these specialists. And I was on the waiting list for 18 months. That's just forever, isn't it? That wants to kill themselves. 18 months.
It's funny, when it happened to my mental health crisis came in 2007.
Yeah.
Before that, depression, anxiety were just things that happen to people out there, like a very small minority of people, and those people might go somewhere to be helped. That was I literally had no notion of what the hell. People used to talk about OCD, and it became trendy to say, oh, you've got OCD because you're like your room was clean or your desk was clean at work. And I remember thinking, I think I've got that. Is it okay to joke about that now? That was the only thing. And then all of a sudden,
want to talk about it,
then everything changed for me, and all of a sudden I had to like really take it. One thing I have done is, I think similar to yourself, is I've took a real interest in getting better. So I've said, right, how can I get better? And I've not give up, and I've thought, right, what's the next thing? What's the next thing? What's the next thing? And I've changed significantly to try and do that. But as you said, it's hard to know exactly what causes things. It's weird, isn't it? And I remember talking to someone about, I've been for 4 sessions of counselling. And I spoke to someone who studied counselling. And she said, everyone needs a counsellor. I said, every person, doesn't matter how sane people think they are and how in control they are, everyone should talk about what they're going through. Even if you just talk about it to process it, because things build up. And people then get into behaviours like alcohol, drink, drugs, self-hatred, anger, bitterness, all that stuff to manage it. Do you know what I mean? And we need to be more. I mean, the schools are 10 times better today. I mean, I was doing PSHE. I used to be a teacher. I'd do PSHE, and now we're like doing lessons out. This is what anxiety is what depression is. I mean, I remember like at school, there was very few people who you knew were gay, and now like they have like a group at school, like, oh, if you're gay, you can go. There must have been kids when I was at school thinking in their head that they're gay or whatever, and they're thinking, what's wrong with me? You know what I mean? So the schools are a lot better, and I know the services are patchy, which is why Hope Street, things like Hope Street are so important, and you can be waiting a while to see someone, and there's huge problems with underfunding and all that, but once you show an interest yourself and start to learn yourself, that's the key thing. And then you just need as much help as you can, can't you?
Definitely. It's the waiting list, the time. I think that's why we lose a lot of people as well, because of those waiting lists. And I know it can't be helped, but that's why the places, like you say, like Hope Street are so important, because they're a little lifeline whilst you're waiting. And like I said, 8 is forever for someone that thinks they're going to kill themselves now. Do you know what I mean? That is why I do speak out, and I tell people exactly what meds I'm taking. If I've had an episode, anything that happens to me, I'm not bothered. I'll put it online, and people are like, oh my God, you share your whole life. And I don't at all. I just share what I want people to know. You know, I have got a private life as well. Although people will say, God, no, I know everything inside and out about you. But they don't. But I do post the mental health things and push it a lot, because the amount of inboxes I've had, even off males as well, which is really good, because like you say, obviously being a man, it's much harder to admit that you're struggling than a female. That's just like a sex thing, isn't it? But it is true about the men. But even that, a lot of, like, you know, Paddy the Baddie, people like that, they speak out about it now. And that makes people think, oh, it's okay for me to, you know, to admit. It's, you know, like you say, it's not an embarrassing thing. I can say this, you know, or I'm gay, I can come out and tell people, you know. It's all the same kind of thing. But those pressures, keeping them in, that's what makes you lose your. But to me, though, I didn't think I was keeping anything in. See, this is another problem, you know. If I'd have talked, maybe, but because I saw my traumas as not really a big deal, I didn't talk about them. Because so again, you know, I mean, I've been to the head prescribers at Broadoak. He was a brilliant guy. He was a man, I remember. And I sat there with him, and he was like, Deb, what are we going to do with you? You know, this is the head prescriber of a mental institute. And he's like, I don't know what to do with you. And I'm like, you know, you're supposed to tell me. But he was stumped, because I tried, you know, there's a list there of every medication in the whole wide world that I've had. I'd had CBT, I'd had one-on-one, I'd had psychotherapy, I'd had, you name it, I'd been there, you know, and I'd picked up little bits and learnt little bits. I liked routine. I don't like things to change much. You know, I do like to be able to have a thing on my fridge. This is what I'm doing Monday. This is what I'm doing Tuesday. I'm keen on that. I am OCD. And recently my niece has actually been, she's not been diagnosed yet, but she's on the list and for autism and ADHD and things like that. And she is a mini me. We laugh and say she should be my child, not my sister's. And so I'm thinking, when I was born, so instead of going back to my trauma of 13 years ago, if we go back 40 odd years ago, I don't think they had posh names for things like autism and stuff like that. So I actually do believe, although I don't even know if I'm going to bother getting tested, because what does it matter if it's on a piece of paper saying, yes, you are? But I actually think I've been autistic all of my life. And I know the spectrum's wide on that, and everyone has a little touch of autism and that. But the way my niece reacts about things, the way she panics and worries about things, the way she lines things up, her OCD, her anger, you know, I have quite a temper. I didn't suffer any, like, what were you just saying before when you were saying there's different things that, you know, it can make you angry, it can make you this, it can make you that. I did get quite a violent temper at one point, and it'd take me 2 days to calm down over something. So that was like a kind of, not a side effect, but it was something that I wasn't normally used to feeling, you know, and I used to get really angry about things. And like I said, I couldn't just calm down and switch it off. I'd go on and on and on about this one thing until I got my answer or sorted it out. And then it'd take me 2 days to calm down, which is absolutely ridiculous. I went into like Hulk mode. I'd lose the plot and then take me ages to calm down. And my niece is exactly the same. And so I do definitely think I'm possibly autistic. You start judging yourself, don't you, and diagnosing yourself, really. But yeah, I would go as far as to say that's probably contributed to the way my mental health is. But I've never had any help for it because it just didn't exist. You know, back naughty kid. I got put in a separate class because for work and I was naughty. But I wasn't at all. I'd finished my work, and if they'd have given me another load of work, I'd have probably done it. I was just too I was intelligent, really highly intelligent. So which my niece is as well, funnily enough. You know, she's not got any bad side effects from autism. She's the other way. She thinks too much. Like in assembly, if they talk about flooding or anything like that, she'll come home and she'll be like, are we going to flood, Mum? Is our house going to flood? Will the water come in our window? You know, and she overthinks everything. She's 6 years old. You just can't remember. You can't imagine at that age thinking of these things, but she does. And I see me in her and I think, oh God, this poor child, because I don't want anything to happen to her when she's older. I don't want her to suffer like I have. And she's suffering already in her own way. She can't go to parties, stuff like that. She doesn't like mascots, anything that covers its head, you know. And I think, oh my God, she's just totally me.
It's interesting because they say now like 40% of people might be neurodiverse in some way. I think there's a relationship between those people and emotional regulation and mental health and well-being, which we don't really understand because it's such a grey area. And as you said, back in the day, it was like, oh, they're a bit weird. She's a witch. Throw it in the water on a chair and see if she floats. They need to be burned at the stake. They can hear voices. Oh, that's kid's naughty. That kid's evil or twisted or whatever. When in fact, it is so much better now, I think, compared to what it was like even a few years ago. The other thing is, as we said earlier, that the provision's so patchy. I was reading in the paper about people in crisis in some parts of the country, the postcode lottery, and they're getting left and they're doing things to themselves. And it's very, 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 very difficult. Just going back 1 minute, have you ever been sectioned or close to it? When it started at 30, did you have profound depression and anxiety? And was the depression like a lack of motivation? Was that its principal kind of characteristic?
I just felt like I couldn't be asked, to put it bluntly. But for me, you see, I hear people talk about their depression and say, oh, I've had a bad week this week. I've had a couple of bad days. For me, it was 6 month blocks. So I'd be 6 months absolute dribbling, my mum dressing me, feeding me, forcing me to, you know, if she didn't come round and knock me up. At one point, I ended up living on their floor, and I'd slept in my mum and dad's bedroom on the floor so they could watch me. That's how bad I was. Not for killing myself, just, I was just like a lump of meat. I couldn't even, like, in the lounge, I couldn't even, like, sit up. I'd have to lie down on the, you know, I was just like a lump of meat. And I remember I used to watch the clock and think, come on, 4 o'clock, because at 4 o'clock it's like coming towards like going to bedtime, so then I can lie down and get away with it. You know, the things that used to terrorize me. I'd watch the clock all through the night, you know, oh no, I'm gonna have to get up in a minute, you know, like 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm worrying about 7 coming round, you know. I was terrible for it. Loads of things like that. I lived in Birmingham for a year as well during that time, and I remember we used to come every weekend, me and Kennedy, and we'd come to Liverpool from Friday to Sunday, and I used to dread going home, you know, because then I was totally on my own with it. At least I felt a bit safer when I had family around me, because my mum had through and stuff like that, but I wasn't capable of doing any of that. Didn't cook for myself, didn't, you know, never drank a drop of water. I think I got to that point where, like I said, I thought if I didn't eat or drink, maybe I'd just drift away and die and no one would notice. I think that's what my plan was, because I didn't have the nerve to do what I wanted to really do. But like I said, I'm so glad that I didn't, because I actually love my life and I'm really happy. And I just want people to know that you can get back there, you know?
Yeah. Do you know that the guy you spoke to, he said, like, you've got Debz syndrome, didn't he? Like, you didn't know how to explain it because it was unusual. Did you ever come close to being sectioned? And what medications have you been on? Have you been on antipsychotics or?
No, I've never been on anything like that. Never heard voices or anything extra than just feeling, like I said, feeling the itchiness and feeling dirty was a thing with me, but never like anything like hearing any voice. I mean, I've been in group therapy at Hope Street, and there was a guy there that used to hear, like, I think it was 12 voices. He's a friend of mine now on Facebook, and they've gone away, but it was like me listening to him. I didn't want to not believe him, because I know how crazy mental health can be, but he used to have like a constant woman crying, 2 men arguing, a baby, a dog barking. This is all going on in his head 24/7. And I used to sit there and believe him, but find it hard to believe, because how can you have all them voices in your head 24/7? I mean, that's just like,
it's terrible, isn't it? I mean
I can't do that.
No, but the thing with depression is, your depression, if you're constantly demotivated during a depressive episode to the point where you're just thinking, I want to die, that's horrible. But it's not technically psychosis, because like psychosis, they talk about different levels of neurosis, which is mild, even though they can be horrible, and psychosis, which is more severe, they reckon, detached from reality. And you have what's called positive symptoms of psychosis, where things are happening above normality, so voices and delusions and that. And then you have things which are taken away from experience, which is complete retreat, because you're terrified of everything and paranoid, you know. And I often think about like what that must be like for those people who experience that, the fear and all that stuff. And then, I mean, I've had anxiety and depression, and some of the things I've felt and the things I've been through, particularly that 2007 to 11. I mean, I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy.
Exactly. I always, it's funny, isn't it? You find people say the same kind of things, you know, and like in group therapy, and that, like I said, I learned that's why I'm tired. I learned that's why my memory's not very good. So by going to these different things, although like group therapy, I'd say wasn't for me. I wasn't a big talker in them. I didn't really, you know, hearing everyone's problems and thinking, why am I sat here? I don't need to know this. I've got my own, you know. I kind of like had a little bit of a selfish streak, but in those sessions, I did learn I picked up little bits, you know, little tips, like doing a rota in CBT, that they'll tell you how to rota your life down. And, you know, even if you have 1 shower a week, that's better than none, you know. So she'd say, go home, aim to have a shower this week, because obviously that was really traumatic to me. I used to think it hurt. I can just laugh at that now, but Jesus Christ, it was so real at the time. I really thought the shower hurt my skin. You know, they used to check, my mum would check the heat and go, what is it? It wasn't about the heat. I don't know what it was. It was just this one fear. It's crazy. And then went to this head prescriber, like you say, I've never been sectioned, but I was begging him. I was begging him to section me. My dad took me to that appointment, and you go, the door's open, you stand in the glass box, the door's shut behind you, then the other one's open, you know, it's really secure and all that. And I went in there and I was begging him. I said, I felt like I wanted the world to stop so that I could catch up. So I wanted to go and lie in a white bed. This is what I used to think in my head. Lie in a white bed in my white robe in the mental institute, and I could just breathe and just get better, and then come out and everything could start as normal. That was the kind of weird thing I had in my head. I thought the world would wait for me, a bit like when you go to prison, you come out, you're still the same age kind of thing. You know what I mean? I wanted the world to stop while I went in there. But then when I seen the place, and when he told me, listen, you don't want to go in there, then I started crying, don't put me in there, don't. So I'd gone from one extreme. On the way in the car, I was begging, I want them to take me in. And then on the way, when I was in there, I was like, please don't keep me here. You know what I mean? It was just like, I was like so up and down. I wanted to be kept and helped, because I thought that'd give me a break from the world and it'd stop while I had time to get better. But the world doesn't stop, time doesn't stop. So, you know what I mean? There was no point in going and lying in there. I was better being out and trying to be active, because I think sometimes when you go in a ward with people like that, I think you can get worse.
And then you can't go out in nature and do things that help you. Are we all right to have a little break for a few minutes? Yeah. And what we'll do, I've took loads of notes there because you've touching on so many good things. And then in part 2, we'll just go through 2 or 3 other little things. Is that okay?
Yeah, cool.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to part 2 with Debz, and a remarkable story. And Debz, not only do you speak really well in terms of communication and passion, but it's clear that you want to open up to help others. And I think that that's really important. And we'll talk about advice towards the end of the podcast, which you give to people. Now, I want to start with what I think is a funny story, but it's actually not funny. And I've heard this twice and found it quite entertaining twice. But you used to work in a bookmaker's, and
I did.
You said that you'd need someone to walk you to the bookies and then make sure you go into the door. And you said that what would you do if there was no one there and you walked up to it?
No, like awareness of anything around me. I was like just floating in a bubble. So this was when I was like really ill. I had to be fed, and I'd have my mum put my socks on, and how I went to work, I do not know. And the poor women I worked with at the time, they must have carried me. I mean, Kennedy was young then. She was 14, so she's 26 now. But she was 14, so she was still at school. So I think it was the only time in my life that I've ever got a bit of benefits. So I was only working part-time. So I think I had to do like 3 hours, 3 nights a week. That's all it was, 9 hours or something like that. And how I went there and they put up with me, I don't know, because I was like an airhead. It was like being a proper blonde bimbo. I would literally float my way. My mum would have to take me. And if she hadn't have like directed me in, I'd just keep walking. I had nowhere. I was just going. It's like a Forrest Gump thing, you know, where you just run. Well, it was one of them. I just wouldn't have stopped. I had this is work. This is where I'm going. You know, I knew I was going to work, but if I'd have walked on my own and not been picked up after, I could have ended up anywhere, because I would literally come out and I would just walk. And my mind used to be that busy that I wouldn't think about where I was going. I'd just go in a straight line. So for me, there was even dangers of crossing the road and stuff. I'd just walk, you know, and people are shouting and beeping and where are you going? You know, and I just, nothing, just bubble. And
it's funny. I mean, all joking aside, if you are suffering from a real lack of motivation with depression, because depression can be a number of different things to different people. I've tried to write about depression and describe it, and it's very hard to put it into words, but William Styron, I think his name is, wrote a book called Depression. And there's a very small book, thin one, just called Depression. It was released in the Vintage series, and he captured it. I went, that is how I felt. And he describes what you're saying, that like lack of motivation, inability to stand and stuff. And this idea that I don't care what's going on around me, and I've got no feelings, and I feel bad. I'm retreating from the world, and whatever happens out there, I'm not interested. And this feeling just can dominate you. You've got this feeling of
smothers you.
It's very, very powerful. But that William Styron book, Depression, it's a small one in Vintage Classics. It's only like 80 pages or whatever. He just starts getting sectioned as well. And he said that, like, just as a little joke and an aside, he said they do art therapy and he'd be drawing these pictures. And he said the woman would come up to him and go, "Oh, I can really see how you're trying to capture your depression." And he was thinking inside, is she taking the mickey? So he said he started to indulge, yeah. So he'd be drawing stuff, and then he'd be saying, "Yeah, this is me depression here, and that's how I've captured it." And she'd be talking to him, going, "Yeah, I can really see that." And he said he was like taking the mickey. And he said, in the end, when he stopped, he missed it. And he said, that was helpless. What I was doing. She was like, he thought like, oh, she's taking the mickey and this isn't helping. He said, but it actually, he was putting something down and discussing it. And he said it did help. And I found that fascinating. But that feeling, no, it's not very nice, is it?
About a friend of mine, like I said, he stopped taking his meds. I went to school with this lad. I'm really close with him now. I'd consider him one of my best friends, even though I don't see him often. And I never seen him out of school for 20 years, but because depression brought us together. And he actually got sectioned. He come off his meds after 10 years. He was like, "Deb, I feel fine. I'm going to do it." I was saying, "Don't do it. Don't do it." He did it. He wanted to do it. He weaned off them. Within a month, he was in Macclesfield and somewhere in Macclesfield and Mental Institute. But he's got a very dry sense of humour. And so he'd go out onto the ward and he'd allowed his phone, but they'd taken his shoes off him and his laces and all this. And he'd FaceTime me and he was like, "Look where I am." I was like, "I told you, why have you done this? Why did you come off these meds?" And he'd make a joke. He'd go out into the corridor and he'd have me on the phone. And he'd look both ways and he'd go, "Bloody hell, someone died in here," and he'd make jokes like this with his dry sense of humour. But it was like, he was in there because they thought he was going to kill himself, and he was dead dry. And they'd say to him, "Get back in your room," because he was upsetting other patients. But he was just like, kind of, as well as being so depressed and ill, he was making his jokes about being in there as well. He's like, "I've had my lace taken off me. Can you believe it?" And we're laughing about it, but it was really very serious. Do you know what I mean? And he always annoys me because whenever I was ill, he used to phone me, and I'd rarely answer the phone to anybody, but him, because I felt he understood me. I'd answer, and he'd always say, "Go and put the kettle on, Deb." And I used to want to punch his face in for that, because that was like this was another thing I wanted to mention to you. Anything that I used to do, like if I loaded a washer, that'd give me an excuse to have 3 hours kip. Anything I did, it took that much out of me, which is absolutely pathetic. Just loaded the washer in between talking to you, no problem, and I can hang my clothes out, no problem. The washer, loading it and hanging my clothes out when I was ill, was like a mammoth task. That would give me at least 8 hours kipping power. I'd load it and I'd be that exhausted that I'd go to sleep for 4 hours, and then I'd get it all out, hang it up, and then that'd be another 4 hours sleep. So I'd reward myself. I escaped for sleep. So I'd reward myself for doing anything. So if I answered the phone to like my friend, that'd give me another, I could have 3 hours sleep for that, because that was such an effort to answer the phone. That's how I reward myself. I say when I was ill for those 10 years, I probably slept 6 or 7 of them. If you did it in time and worked it out, I slept away half of.
Was some of that you just lying there though, relaxing?
Yeah, not relaxing, because I used to try, but obviously you can't sleep 24/7. So obviously a lot of the time I would just lie there, like I said, low as I can on the floor, fetal position, and the rabbit would be right, come by me, and that's why I was crazy over this rabbit, obsessed with it, because it was the only thing that was there.
Do you know just in terms of timeframes then, this kind of started when you were 30, and since you're 40, things have been a lot better.
Yeah, loads better.
And
I can't put my on anything of why, I can't say this is the magic pill or this was the magic, but I've taken little bits of information out of everything that I have learnt off all different kinds of people that suffer it, people that are trained in it, there's different places you can get information from, isn't there? You've got your professionals, but I don't think anyone truly understands depression unless they've had it themselves. That's why I love Hope Street, because everyone that works there or volunteers there, they've had it, they know. Do you know what I mean? That's a massive difference to me, because I know they've felt like I can talk to you, I know the kind of things that I'm talking about, whereas a professional, they might have studied it and have a degree in it, but have you really been there? And that's that's the difference between, you know, how much I think you can trust someone and let it out to them. Yeah, I totally talk about everything because I just want to help people. That's the only reason I mention it now. It's not a woe is me or everyone feels sorry for me. I've been through this and all that. I don't care about any of that now. I'm great. I'm happy. I'm perfect. I've never felt better. I really haven't. I'm loving my life. Yeah, it's simple things, but routine. So I run now, that bit of exercise still kills me to get out there. I don't want to go. I'll start washing dishes or doing anything that I can do to get out of it. But when I come back, I feel like I'm on top of the world. So exercise does help, although it's the last thing you want to do. And when I was ill, going out for a walk or getting fresh air would be the last thing I wanted to do because I wanted to stay in bed. But you need to, these are the times where you've got to fight and push because it will make you feel better.
Just on that note, this morning I woke up, didn't feel great. I did a 20-minute yoga flow on YouTube. And then I did my Wim Hof breathing and I felt brilliant ever since. I had my cold shower as well. But can I just backpedal a little bit? Do you know that 30 to 40? Within that, you'd have some decent spells, but then you'd have 6 month down spells. Is that right?
Yeah. So it'd be for me, like I said, I didn't understand people that just said, oh, I've had a bad day this week or a bad couple of days, or like you then, oh, I got up and didn't feel too great this morning. I'm not that. I'm the one or the other. But I find that in life and in my family as well, we're all the same really in my family. Not for depression wise, but the way we are either 0 or 100%. I've been told by many doctors and therapists, it's okay to be 50%. I'm not a 50% girl. I'm either diving in fully wet under the water or I'm not even putting my toe in. I'm not a halfie. I'm not going to go in and paddle to my knees. It's all or nothing for me. But I think that's a learned behaviour because my family are like that and my daughter's got that off me. So it's very hard for me. But then my depression has followed that kind of suit as well. So I haven't had like an off day and I feel great today, but tomorrow might be shitty, you know. It'd be 6 months of like literally peeling me up off the floor and then 6 months of being completely normal and grateful and happy. And I'm like, but in those 6 months of feeling good, the fear and anxiety of it coming back and it's winter time that it tends to happen. It used to be when it was like winter time again, so the sad syndrome comes into it. I'd spend those 6 months still in fear because I know it's going to come back. There is one thing, I'll give a little bit of advice. There's a thing on, if you YouTube it, it's called the black dog. And it's one thing that I think, I don't know if you've ever seen it, that I think actually really describes, you know, you say sums up like depression. You said that guy summed it up for you. It's a little cartoon about a black dog. It's just called The Black Dog. I'm not even sure who wrote it. I should look into it really, because it's the thing I send to people when I say, you feel like you've got depression, watch this, tell me, do you resonate to it? And that's one thing that I used to, rather than explain to people when I was feeling really bad, I'd just say, go on YouTube and watch The Black Dog. And that is a brilliant little cartoon. It's only a few minutes long, but it really used to sum it up for me. And then I wouldn't have to explain to people.
Yeah, you know? what you were going through. Do you know the medications you've been on? You've been on antidepressants and you've been on motivational things above SSRIs. SSRIs are a type of, basically one of their families of antidepressants that work on the serotonin levels in your brain. So you've been on them. What other medications have you been on then? And you say you're on medication now. What's your kind of sustenance level?
I've just tried all of the different ones. So like when you say your SSRIs, they're your basic level. When you first go to a doctor and they just give you some antidepressants, it'll be like citalopram, escitalopram, fluoxetine. God, there's so many, I can't even remember the names now, but when people pop up with ones that, I've had them, I've tried them. And again, like I said, you go from day one, you do 6 to 8 weeks. And if nothing changes, you are back to day one with a new one. And then, you know, so it's like, you don't feel great when you're having them because things get worse before you get better. But you also know that a month and a half down the line, you could have wasted your whole time taking them. And that's really like a hard thing to swallow, I think, for someone who thinks they're taking medication, they think they're going to get better when they just don't. You're basically a guinea pig. They don't know if they're going to work for you.
With me, it's a 4-month thing with citalopram. It's 4 months before it fully kicks in. It's a long time.
nothing. I just kept going back, and I never felt any change off any of those. And then duloxetine was the first one. I've been on that a while now. Do you know what? I should have looked all this kind of thing up. This is what I mean when I wing things. But
No, it's fine.
quite a while now, and I'm on the top dose, which I think is 120 milligrams, so 260 tablets twice a day, and then the pregabalin as well, which I take twice a day as well. I think I'm only on a small dose of that, but the duloxetine is high. But that did help me because I did get a bit more anxious a few years back, so I added that to it, and I've been perfect ever since. You know what I mean? And when I say perfect, I don't feel sad.
Yeah. Do you know the first one is the one above SSRIs, which is a motivational one. What's the second one that you're on a low dose for?
Yeah, that's anxiety.
Anxiety, yeah. So are they anti-anxiety tablets?
Yeah.
Yeah. So they're not like SSRIs, they're like a milder form of, I get you. And that's the level that works for you.
So when I went to get them, I didn't realise, I would have thought that duloxetine was the controlled drug, but it's not, it's the pregabalin. So I don't actually know why that is. But I don't know if not many people are offered it. I'm not sure. I don't know if that's because I've always looked at the depression side of things, so I never really thought about anxiety. But those things hand in hand. If you've got one, you'll get the other. Do you know? But you can have them separately as well. So they normally, so I didn't really think about the anxiety. I just thought I had depression. But then I realised that, again, with time, I was panicking about things, and that's obviously not depression. That's anxiety. So, which are two different things, but go close hand in hand. You know what I mean? It's difficult. When you're suffering depression, just feel rubbish. It's difficult to realise other things that might also be affecting you, because you just think of the being sad and wanting to die. You don't actually think, well, hang on a minute, am I panicking about certain things? Have I got worries, debts, or different things? I mean, don't get me wrong, I had nothing wrong with me. Like I said, normal upbringing, happy childhood. I've only got one sister. We've never wanted for anything. So it was really strange that it hit me so bad, because people are like, you're so confident and so got no issues. Why are you so? Why do you want to die? What's your and that's when I think you've got to realize that depression has not got any kind of particular victim that it picks. It can be anyone. You can be rich, you can be poor, you can be pretty, you can be anything in the world, any kind of person, and if it gets you, and it doesn't matter. Do you know what any victim. So, because I think people used to think, I've had people say to me that have known me all of my life, saying, you haven't got depression. Don't believe you. You're the most confident person I know. I really was. And that's why it was so shocking. And that's why it's so good for someone like me to talk, because people look at me and think, there's no way she's got any problems. Do you know? And they're right, I haven't. So why am I feeling like this? And that's when it makes me think that it's not outside factors, that maybe I have actually got an imbalance in my brain. You know what I mean? And so I can't help it, because there's that aspect as well, isn't there? You can have, like you said, the trauma that causes you to be depressed, but you could also just have absolutely none of that, and it just be something that's not, your brain's just not producing them endorphins or the serotonin you need, the happy feelings. So, but I do think I have got traumatic things that have led to this, but I do also think that I could have a bit of an imbalance in my brain. I don't think I make as much serotonin as what the average person does. So I think it's a bit of both, but I do think you could be one or the other as well. So,
I think you've summed that up nicely there, that kind of nature thing. And it's always different for different people, isn't it? In terms of advice that you would give to people, I've wrote down a few things you've already said. So for you, a meaningful routine is important. Yeah. Exercise is important. Psychotherapy worked for you, where you were talking about your past as well as your present. So CBT, cognitive behavior therapy, it's more about what you can do about now, whereas psychotherapy goes back, and you found that helpful for you. You found Black Dog on YouTube as a way of you understanding things. Have you got any other advice that you would give to people?
My main thing is just don't ever give up that hope of and I know this sounds so cheesy and corny, that it's okay not to be okay in that, but I still write that on everything when I post about mental health. It is okay, to not be okay. And it really is. And it is cheesy, and I feel like dead corny saying it and all that. And I know I didn't believe the people that said it to me when I was ill. I used to think, you know what I mean? I don't want to hear that. I don't believe you. You know, no, you don't understand how I feel. But there really is light at the end of that tunnel. And you've just got to hang in there, unfortunately. You've got to ride the wave. That's all I can say, because you will come better. And I didn't believe it, but I am now living proof that I am happy again. And I never, ever thought I'd say that. You know, I'm an honest person. I've got nothing to hide. I'm not lying. I don't gain anything from telling anyone this. But those that do actually kill themselves, brave to do it, wow, you know what I mean? I wished I could have done it. But what I would have missed if I'd have done that, but I know some people who have done that are missing, that really hurts me, because I just wish I could have spoke to them people before they did that. Why couldn't I get to them people? I know you can't save everyone, but you know, there's people I've known that have done it. I had a guy from school who hung himself with his belt off the back of a bedroom door. And I just think, God, Danny, why couldn't I have just spoke to you? You know, I feel I could have made change, and that's why I talk out now. Nothing to do with any kind of sympathy. I really don't. I don't give a shit what anyone thinks of me. I don't care. Come on, looking like this, I've just got up, I've had a lie in. Do you know what I mean? I just want people to know that you can get over it. I'm living proof. And it took me 10 years, I'm not going to lie. And it was a hard 10 years, and it was hit and miss. You know what I mean? I used to pray every day to die. Now I think, God, if you know, the law of attraction, if it comes back to get me, I'm a goner, because I prayed and prayed and prayed and prayed. I don't even believe in God. And I used to say, please, can you just take me? I just don't, I can't do this anymore. Every day of my life for years and years. And now look at me now, you know, I act on TV. I've got loads of friends. I've got a great family. My family have never, ever not been there for me. You know, I've got my daughter. She's thriving. She's gorgeous. You know, I'm rich with all those things. Not money wise, but you know, with all the things that matter. And how could I have ever thought about leaving all those behind? Do you know what I mean? You've got to go in.
I think one of the cases sometimes with being someone who's in tune with emotions, the negatives, but also the positives. The positives are so good, and I think even if you like it more balanced than in between, and you don't have the real downs and the real highs, like more stoic. I think that for me, like saying, I just do beautiful things every day. And this morning I did a 20-minute yoga flow with Charlie Follows. I think she's Australian. She's in the woods on a mat. And I just did that for 20 minutes, and I just felt great afterwards.
Yeah, you know I'm glad. And at least you know, do a little thing like that, you can change it. You can change the frequency.
Yeah.
You know.
One thing I've said to a lot of people who say, oh, I couldn't get up this morning and I stayed in bed all day. I almost sound like a bit, not aggressive or frustrated with them, but I've said to people, like, go to the shop, walk to the end of the street and come back. Just get up and do it. Have that discipline to do it. And as you said before, like you won't feel like it a lot of the time. But once it becomes a habit, you will do it and you will get better, and that muscle is strengthened. But I think your advice is spot on. But I think the key thing to take from it is never, ever, like Winston Churchill said, never, ever, ever, ever give up. Because even if you don't believe in a higher power or whatever, life is a cosmic dance that lasts a very short amount of time. And there's things that you'll experience in that life. Like the way I saw you when you did that talk with Kennedy, because Kennedy spoke, your daughter spoke with you in the first presentation you did. And I could just see the way you looked at each other, like the love in the family. There's times as well, just to finish, sometimes when my son's here and my mum and dad are around, and sometimes I have a feeling when we're all in the same room together, I just kind of look around and smile, and there's just a feeling that I get from the family being together that you just can't explain, you know what I mean? And it's
the beautiful. Opposite, depressed, in it? It's not the spectrum where you want to be. Yeah, it's nice.
Yeah. Debz, thank you so much for your honesty, for what you've shared, the sincerity of your message and your desire to help others through Hope Street, because I loved your talks. And you've got a bit of an infectious personality as well. As you say, you're all in. No, but when other people speak to you, I think they're left with a positive feeling. And I think that's one of the best things that you can have in the world. You know what I mean?
That's what I mean. If anything good can come out of all my bad, then make it be saving people. No one deserves to feel that way.
Absolutely, absolutely. I have a little thing now I have in my journal each morning. If I have a bad day or a bad feeling, I say, I don't want to live like that. I actually say, no, I don't want to live like that. I don't want to live like that. You know, just little things like that can sometimes help. Is there anything that we haven't touched that you'd like to mention?
Oh, do you know what? I could sit and talk here for a month to you. That's like the tiny little scraping of the, you know, I mean, I've got so much more that's happened to me, but, you know, I try, and that's why I go off on a tangent, because there's that many things. And then, like I said, my memory's bad. So I think of something else and I have to say it. That's why I talk over people sometimes. And I don't mean to. It's just that if I don't butt in, it's gone.
It's
Do you
gone.
know what I mean? Yeah. So I'm sorry if I've done any talking over, but, you know, I have to get things out. Otherwise I just forget. But yeah, I could go on forever. I'll have to do another one sometime.
Absolutely, absolutely. I want to say just about that. That was something you mentioned before about memory. My memory definitely, since I think the steroids I was on aren't good for memory for me genetic illness, which have been taken since I was 24, 23. But SSRIs, they definitely have an impact on your memory, and it can be quite scary. As I'm getting into my later 40s now, sometimes I think, because I think back, I used to, people used to say to me, what happened then and what happened here? And I'd tell them, and now they say to me, you used to know all that. And I'm thinking, but be easy on yourself, folks, if your memory isn't what it used to be. But Debz, again, thank you very much. I'll press stop and we'll have a little chat if that's okay. But I'll stop the recording now. Thanks, everyone.